The hosts feel it would be a little unkind to present this podcast without just a word of friendly warning. We are about to unfold the story of Frankenstein, a man of science who sought to create a man after his own image without reckoning upon God. It is one of the strangest tales ever told. It deals with the two great mysteries of creation, life and death. I think it will thrill you. It may shock you. It might even horrify you. So if any of you feel that you do not care to subject your nerves to such a strain, now's your chance to. Well, we've warned you. Hello and welcome once again to the Frankencast. I'm the mad scientist Anthony Bowman. My pronouns are he, him, and I'm joined as always by...
the ice truck full of stripper bodies. That is Eric Velasquez. My pronouns are also he, him. Choose. And guess what, Anthony? We're back in the Frankenwarp one more time, baby. We moved on to the wonderful year of 1990. That was actually made in 1984.
Yeah. Yeah, so, as we did the content warning last week, we got to continue that over. Yeah. So, like last week, being an Italian movie from the 70s, this is a French movie from the 80s.
I feel like you could just say this is a French movie.
Yeah. So not only are we going to get another scene of sexual assault, but we are going to get a sort of flippant French response to it that is probably more frustrating than the actual assault itself.
Like, out of all the movies we've watched, this might be the grossest for that.
Yeah. I don't disagree. There's a lot of things I like about this, but there's a lot of things that I wish were different about this that would make me like it a lot more.
Yeah, this one, it's like, there are parts where I'm like, this is a great movie, and then there are parts like, this is not a good movie, this is not. All right, so let's get started with Frankenstein 90.
So we start out and we see like this man walking along a fence, and there's like signs on it that say like National Center for Scientific Research, restricted access, that kind of stuff.
He's got this weird tube on his back, and like, what's up with his face? It looks very wet.
I did not even notice the face thing until so much later, and I was like, wait, what? And I rewound the movie because I was like, is it serious? Like,
but yeah, like, no, this looks like a normal person's face that's just really wet.
Yeah, and if you're really, really focusing on it, you might eventually notice that it never really moves, but it's so subtle. Like, ultimately we'll see that this is a mask that is just...
hell of a mask.
Yeah, it's a really good mask that looks like a human face. But, yeah, it seriously took me until he took it off before I realized that it was a mask.
Yeah, but we immediately get that this is kind of a horror comedy because the music basically tells us. Because it's like kind of creepy, but mostly like, haha, it's fun, we're doing a fun movie, but it's a little creepy.
Yeah. And so he ends up like, he climbs over the fence, enters the building, and then goes into a lab that is full of various like fish tanks bubbling with green liquid. Yeah, every one of them has like an arm or a leg or whatever. So he takes an arm out of one of the tanks.
And then someone comes in. Now, is this Elizabeth?
I think it is, yeah. I'm pretty sure.
Well, that's very unfortunate because as soon as she pops up, he basically just rushes into her and knocks her out.
Yeah, with the arm. Like,
with the arm, yeah.
He like hits her with a detached arm. And then like immediately we just cut to him climbing back over the fence.
The tube opens up, the arm drops out, and the dog just comes over and grabs it. And he has a fight with a dog over this arm.
Yeah, and it's like such a rubbery arm, like it's so fake, but it's great.
Yeah.
But yeah, if you didn't realize it was a comedy, now we have like this, an arm falling out of a tube into the dirt and then being like wrestled with a dog. So yeah, it's definitely a silly movie.
Yeah. And then this individual gets in his vehicle, and turns out the mask was a mask, Anthony.
Yeah.
But the funny thing is is that whenever he takes it off, it just looks like the guy underneath the mask is just an older version of the mask with a mustache.
Right.
So it's like they got a photo of him, made a photorealistic of the actor when he was younger, and then just him. What's his name? Jean Rochefort. I hope I said that right. I don't do French, so.
Is it not Victor?
Well, the actual character is Victor Frankenstein.
Gotcha.
The actor is Jean Rochefort.
Right, I would say, because he has like a fake name that's like something else. That's,
oh no, I'm sorry. It's not Frankenstein. It's Laforie.
Yeah. So yeah, he drives off, and then he gets home and goes downstairs, and he's got a secret lab, like we often see.
Well, he has a special secret lab, one that's very French.
Oh, very
hidden
French.
behind a wall of wine bottles in his wine cellar. I love that it has like a green light in one of the bottles.
Yeah, and it's really great. So like he goes through the door, and the camera stays in the cellar, and the wall kind of closes back up, and when it closes, it rattles, and it causes one of the wine bottles to pop, and a cork flies off, and it just sprays wine out on the floor.
Like, that's hilarious.
Yeah.
I almost wonder, it's like, is that a happy accident, and they just kept it? Or was that planned?
It's so good.
Mm-hmm.
Then we see inside his lab, he's also got a bunch of tanks full of bubbling green liquid, but he sits down next to this, like, computer box-looking thing that's labeled Frank. And he hits a button on it and then like starts talking. And so it's like, because it's Frankenstein 90 made in 84, we've got talking computers now.
Yeah. Like we do in the 1990s.
Right. Mm-hmm. It's like basically AI pretty much. Like, and so he's talking to Frank and he's like, I'm getting close. I'm almost finished with the project. And Frank's like, good, because I need my autonomy.
Right. I need my body.
Yeah. He's like, all right, there's just one thing left, and we're almost there.
So then we cut to a castle with like some foggy filters of Vaseline smeared on the camera. And we see that a headless body is chasing Victor.
Yeah. And it's very like gothic, like this is very like Hammer horror looking. But it's also very comedic. Like he's running and screaming from this.
Well, and it's saying there's a small detail missing, a small detail missing, a small detail missing.
Yeah, and Victor is wearing a top hat and a tux.
Right.
In this part, like, and then he, obviously this is a dream. He wakes up, his phone's ringing. He answers and like, oh, it's you. Calm down. I'll be right there.
Right. So it turns out Elizabeth was attacked earlier. There's a bunch of cops in the lab, and there's a lot of body parts that have gone missing recently. We have an arm, a leg, a foot. It's almost like somebody's trying to build a body.
Right. And so, yeah. So, she's like, so this is Elizabeth is his wife in this. And yeah, so he's breaking into her work and stealing her. These are her experiments that he's stealing. And then he even, like we said earlier, knocked her out.
Mm-hmm. Right. Which, that's a nice thing to do to your wife.
Yeah. And of course, all the police are there, and the cops are like, "Can you tell us anything about the attacker?" And he's like, "No," or she's like, "I didn't really get a good look at him. He was of average build. That's all I really could say."
Yeah, kind of like that guy there, the guy that's your husband.
Yeah, and it's like the cop's right to be suspicious, but I don't think he really has a leg to stand on in his suspicion just yet. Like,
right. Well, let's be honest. This cop is too fucking smart for this movie.
Yeah, we'll get some interesting stuff with him here momentarily. But yeah, so then we pretty much cut away to Victor. He is like giving a lecture. He's got like a college course, and he's talking about his scientific work, which is about advances in tissue healing via like osmosis, basically. Mm-hmm. That like two cells can be placed next to each other and they'll join together.
Right, okay. I believe he also name drops Maxwell de Stratford, talks about his cell research as well.
And like the students all just kind of sit there, but like the cop is in the back of the classroom and raises his hand and he's like, "Have you done any experiments with this?"
By the way, I do love that Victor's like, "I have not done anything like that."
Yeah. And he's like, "Yeah, all right, class dismissed."
Right. And the cop's like, "All right, I know what's up."
Yeah.
Got everything I need.
Yeah, he's like, I admire your work. I'm surprised you're using such rudimentary means. And Victor's like, what do you mean? And he's like, listen, I can get you what you need, and you don't have to be like stealing from your wife.
But it's going to cost you.
Yeah. So then we pretty much cut to Victor and that cop meeting. It's pouring down rain. It's,
maybe a junkyard, maybe just somewhere out in the woods.
Yeah, and the cop gives Victor a cooler containing a head, and he's like, this was from a car crash, there's no relatives, nobody's gonna miss this.
Right, I even scuffed it up a bit to make it more irrecognizable.
Right. And Victor, pulls out a big wad of money, and the cop's like, a little bit more.
Another wad. Yeah. Okay, more, a little bit more. Okay, all right, fine. But this is the last one. Nope, you got one more. Come on. And, yep, four envelopes of cash.
Yeah. So then Victor goes, it cuts to him coming into the house, and there Elizabeth is asleep on the couch, and he's kind of trying to, sneak past her.
And as he's doing so, he casually walks right into the lamp and knocks it over.
Yeah, it's like the cooler bumps this whole big lamp that falls over. All the light bulbs burst. It's very loud. Yeah. And Elizabeth wakes up. Then you notice that she's got a whole candlelit dinner at the table next to her where she's sleeping.
Right, she's got a charcuterie board planned for him.
And he's like, what's up? And she's like, it's our 2-year anniversary.
Right, damn, he forgot about the 2-year.
Yeah.
Well, it turns out he was having a conference with some Japanese people. That's what he was doing out so late. Yeah. Yeah,
they're colleagues, or that's what he's going with. And she's like, okay, that's fine. Come on over. And so he sits down next to her, and they start kind of or she starts kissing him, and he keeps looking over his shoulder at the cooler.
I'm tired. Let's go to bed.
And as soon as he shuts her down, she's like, all right, fuck this. And she gets up, and she's like, I think you're having an affair.
With a Japanese lady.
Yeah. And so then she's like, sayonara, and leaves.
That's pretty good.
Yeah, it's a good line. And this is his wife. Theoretically, he should be like, honey, no, wait, come back.
And also, this is year 2. That's still honeymoon period, unless something's gone really wrong.
Right. But instead, he just lets her leave, and we immediately cut to him down in the lab working on his experiment. So he's already attached the head now and is inserting something into the brain of the assembled creature.
Right, like a laser beam or something like that.
Yeah, I think it's drilling in to put the chip from Frank, basically.
Yeah. Well, yeah, he even tells the body, hey, don't worry about it. I just removed part of your brain to make room for a more effective microprocessor.
Yeah.
That's all.
Then he's like, see you soon, Frank, and slides him into this machine that's kind of like the one from Frankenstein 70. It's a big tube that he goes in and closes off, and then we get all this light flashing and stuff.
But because this is the 80s, 90s, we get blue lights instead of green or red.
Yeah. And we see a heartbeat monitor next to him, so we already can see that the creature's alive. Mm-hmm. We still kind of have that moment, we always have that moment where it looks like the creature's dead and it's not moving, and then we get the moment when it moves. So even though we have a heartbeat, we still have that where Victor's just kind of waiting on the creature to actually wake up.
Right, and then of course the creature moves its hand, and it messes with. Was that mylar or is that tinfoil? That's supposed to be mylar.
Yeah, it's one of those space blanket kind of things, but it's gold, and it looks terrible.
Yeah, I don't know. We'll just say it's tinfoil because that's funnier. Just painted gold.
Yeah. But somehow, so Victor's been sitting there waiting, but he's got his head down, and the creature manages to get up off the table or off the slab, take a few steps, and then fall.
It makes then baby animal noises.
Yeah. And then when he falls, Victor's like, oh, wait, oops, and goes to try to help him up.
Now, it is kind of cool that the creature is hey, it's kind of funny. Haven't I seen you somewhere before?
Yeah. So with this being a computer, we don't get all of the creature being a baby. We get a little bit of that, but this is a much smarter creature right out the gate than we usually get.
Right.
So, last week we had that weird situation where there was a hospital, a secret lab, and a house all kind of built together or whatever. Mm-hmm. This time, I had so much trouble keeping up. Are there multiple houses, or is it just one house that looks very different?
Big fuck off house.
Okay, and just different rooms of the house look totally different from each other.
Yeah, either that or the guy literally had. Well, to be fair, it does happen across like 3 different houses. Yeah. All of them of fairly substantial size. So the guy's not poor in any respect.
Yeah. But so like the house that we saw with Victor and Elizabeth when she was asleep,
looked more modern.
It looked very modern. It was very open, big glass windows, but now we see this scene where like it looks like Victor is in like a shared kitchen in like an old kind of like townhouse apartment,
and we have a maid presumably dusting the banister.
Yeah, and he's like cooking something, and then he takes it upstairs, but he doesn't want the maid to see.
So he's like, a weird thing. Like,
yeah, he's like,
why does he care?
Yeah, I don't know. That's what it seemed almost like if you were in an apartment and you were like, I'm not allowed to have this up in my apartment.
Right.
But yeah, I don't know. So that threw me off. But like he gets upstairs, and the creature is in like a room. In a like a small little like studio apartment, and he's like, "Okay, Frank, I got you something to eat," and sets down the pot, which is full of spaghetti
bolognese.
Yeah. Frank just starts like eating the spaghetti with his hands.
Well, yeah. So, like also they introduce themselves, right? So Victor is like, "Hey, Frank," and Frank's like, "Hello, Victor, nice to meet you." And they shake their hands, and Frank almost breaks Victor's hand.
Yeah. And he says, what does he... Oh, he says, "I'm famished." And Victor's like, that's a good vocab word. Most people would say starving, which isn't really accurate. You're not actually starving, but famished, perfect. But then, then he starts eating with his hands, and Victor's like, all right, you got a good vocabulary, but your table manners are trash. We got to work on this.
Here, you got to get the fork. And, of course, Frank grabs a spoon. He's like, nope, the other one.
And then he just like crushes the fork in his hand, just like destroys it.
Right, then he goes to get a drink of water and just busts the glass out of his hand. And then he burps at Victor's face, and Victor's like, well, let's try walking. Walking sounds like a good trick.
Yeah. Then like the phone rings, and Victor answers, and it's Elizabeth, and he's like, I'm a little busy.
I love you. I love you too. Okay, yeah, I love you.
Yeah, and he's like, we'll get together later. So it's like, dude, you fucked up last night. You don't need to be putting her on hold. This is not going to go well for you.
Yeah, you've been married for 2 years, and it's like you've only been dating her for a couple weeks.
Yeah. So when he hangs up, then, Frank is like, what does I love you mean? We just cut away from that. Victor doesn't really say anything. Yeah. And then we just have Victor working at the Frank computer in his lab. And he's like typing in table etiquette, basically, just like importing more. It's like the I know kung fu thing from The Matrix, where he's just like,
literally not even typing in code. Just these are basic etiquette instructions.
Yeah, it's like which fork to use and stuff like that.
Yeah, we never cut our fish with a knife. You have to put it on bread. You have to move it onto bread with a fork.
Yeah.
Why? What? What the hell kind of rules are these?
Yeah, I guess this is like high-class, fancy French table manners.
Never.
And then we immediately cut to... So Frank has had trouble eating with a fork and, walking. Now we're driving immediately.
Okay, I need to ask you this. Did you hear it? Did you hear the actual rhythm, or it sounded like the intro to that Milkshake Brings All the Boys to the Yard song?
No.
You need to go back and listen to that.
Okay.
Because I was like, what? Because like, dun 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 dun, and I'm like, what? Was this sampled?
Huh. It could be, maybe.
I may be insane. I don't know, but I think you should at least check it out.
Yeah, I definitely will.
Yeah.
And so while they're driving, Frank keeps asking Victor, like he keeps talking to Victor, and he's like, there's all these opposites, you got black and white and north and south, microcosm and macrocosm.
Wow, deep concepts.
And he starts to glitch out when he says macrocosm, and it's like cosm, and Victor's like, you got to calm down. You're gonna. I guess it's like when he gets excited, he just like gets stuck in a loop or something.
I've been there. I know how that goes.
So he calms down, and Frank's like, all right, well, I've got so many questions. Like, I don't know what I look like. His face is still bandaged up at this point. Victor's like, you look really good. I promise. You're a very handsome guy, but you've got amnesia because you had a car wreck, and it's going to be a little bit before we get the bandages off your face.
Right. Of course, Frank's a little bit too wrapped up, and he almost hits a guy in his car. Yeah,
at first he almost hits a pedestrian, and then pretty much immediately after that does just hit a guy driving, like just back.
Yeah.
Like,
and the guy has French road rage, so he gets out of the car, walks over, and he's like, "Hey, buddy, what? You hit my car. You know what? Guess what? I'm gonna fuck your car up." So he bends the antenna, which a long time since we've seen one of those,
right?
And then starts kicking the shit out of the car, and Frank's like, "I don't like rude people."
Yeah, so he like gets out of the car and just picks the dude up and just chucks him through the back windshield.
Yeah, window of his car.
So he's just like, he drops him like ass first so that his like head and feet are still sticking up out of the windshield, and he's just like, kind of crunched down into the back of the car.
Then he lifts up the whole back end of the car and drops it so that the suspension busts.
Yeah, just destroys this guy's car.
Mm-hmm.
And, the guy is obviously yelling and cursing about this,
mm-hmm.
and Frank just gets back in the car and they drive off.
Well, you know who was watching that, though?
That's
our from earlier.
Yeah, he's like, suspiciously peeking out from behind a newspaper like you do.
Do you remember the one anime we watched? Like,
yeah.
with that little scumbag assistant?
Oh, yeah.
That reminded me of this guy so much.
Yeah, he's definitely a scheming little, like, conniving dude.
Well, to be fair, you got to make your bones some way, right?
Right, yeah.
Nobody in this situation is doing anything morally correct.
True.
They're really, like, I don't want to be hard on this movie, but there are no good guys here.
Oh, absolutely not, yeah. Yeah, there's nobody to really, like, I guess... Well, the bride character, maybe when we get to her, might be the only,
she's the
like...
most innocent, sure, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Now, we're not talking about Elizabeth. No, she's got some, maybe a little blood on her hands as well.
Yeah, yep. But yeah, so, we see that guy watching, and he ends up following after them as they leave. Mm-hmm. We just cut back to the apartment, and Victor is removing all of Frank's face bandages. Victor's like, you still got some scars, but they'll heal soon. And Frank's like, I want to see now. Like, give me a mirror. And Victor keeps being like, just wait. Like, you're not all the way there yet. Just wait. And he's like, no, I need to see now.
And I believe they make a reference to at least you're more attractive than the actor known as Belmondo. And I'm like, who the fuck is that?
Jean-Paul Belmondo.
Okay. Well, I didn't know him, so...
He was in like a bunch of like French New Wave movies, and he was kind of known as being handsome, but he had like a very kind of rugged look to his handsomeness. Okay. So along the lines of this creature,
he's
like
got what is that guy's name? He was in a lot of gangster movies.
Jimmy Cagney.
Jimmy Cagney. I think you're right about that.
Where they got kind of like a very square jaw and broad forehead and just kind of like...
Yeah, kind of... Oh, Jimmy Durante.
Okay. Gotcha.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Jimmy Durante. Okay, that's the guy. But they also have a prominent nose.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So, okay.
But yeah, so it's a good comparison. But obviously this is our moment. He lets the creature look, or Frank look, and the first time that the monster sees his reflection, he's not happy about it. Yeah. He's kind of disappointed, but like Victor's like the important thing is your soul. Like that's what really matters. It's interesting. Like the soul never really it's Victor or the Frankenstein character in these movies usually kind of doesn't think about where the consciousness of his creature comes from. Like, if it's not the brain, we're just not going to think about it, And in this case, where he's like actually a computer and doesn't probably have a soul, is the rare instance where that comes up as a talking point.
Yeah, it is pretty interesting. Like, honestly, though, this Victor Frankenstein is probably the most sentimental out of everyone.
Yeah.
He would be like the only one that would be really considering that. All the other Frankensteins are like, I ain't got time to worry about such piddly little more things as that kind of morality, right?
Yeah, I mean, you know, like even down to that, like he's teaching Frank, like he's working with him, trying to make him better. Yeah. That's more than we get from. Yeah, exactly.
Well, Victor still doesn't have too much time for that because he immediately gets a call from Elizabeth.
Yeah,
like, I got to talk to her.
Yeah, so he heads down. She's like downstairs. We just cut to Victor and Elizabeth having sex.
Frank stomping around up.
He's like mad, you know, like, and they hear moaning, and you know, Elizabeth's like, "What was that?" And Victor's like, "It's probably like the pipes or something." Like, let's.
Sounds like.
So they just like continue.
Well, they turn on classical music, and he's like, "This really gets me going."
Yeah, and he keeps calling her my gazelle. That's like his, you know, I guess pet name for her during sex.
Boy, that's gonna get darker later.
Yeah. Elizabeth then looks over and sees Frank standing there.
Eyeballing her.
Yeah, watching through the window as they're having sex. And so, of course, she screams. Victor's like, okay, I'll go look. And he looks out the window and sees Frank climbing up the side of the house back to his room.
Right. And he's like, it was just a big tomcat. That's all.
Right.
That's it.
And somehow...
a little bit.
Yeah, and somehow she's like, okay, like, but she saw a man's face in the window. You don't confuse that. Right. But yeah, so then we cut to, like, the next day, and Frank is sitting up in his room putting on makeup.
Yeah, like, the whole lipstick, the whole face.
Yeah.
Eyeshadow. And, of course, Victor's like, I mean, you're kind of a guy, so maybe we don't do that.
Yeah, he says men don't wear makeup, and then he's like, well, usually, which I was like, good on you for like, yeah, you know, some men do, that's okay, but you're probably not, like, you're trying to look like a better version of yourself, and this is probably not what you're intending, so I'm going to kind of dissuade you from it.
Right. And I do like that Frank is like, maybe I need more powder.
Yeah. Frank's like, so what? That's that thing that was going on last night. What's that about? Is that love? And Victor's like, well,
the physical form of it. Yeah.
Yeah, kind of in a way. It's an expression of it at least. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And then Frank's like, I'm tired of being locked up in this room. Like, I want to get out. And Victor's like, it's just temporary. Like, give me a little bit more time. You still need to heal. When it's safe, you know, you can get out of the house.
Yeah, we can go for a walk later. And then Frank's like, yeah, but what about the TV you promised?
Yeah, I'm stuck in this room all the time. I at least want a TV.
Yeah, right? Come on.
Victor's like, all right, well, I got to go. I've got to go to work. I'll be back later. So we get Frank reading. You know, I don't remember if we see what the book is.
It was something about happiness.
Okay.
Like deciding happiness or something like that.
Yeah, because I think he reads a little bit of out loud. But then he hears a woman singing downstairs and is like, I'm curious about what's going on down there.
Yeah.
And yep, it does not go well. So he goes down and it's the maid that we saw earlier.
Okay, now this is where it stops being a comedic horror movie and starts being a real horror movie for a moment. Because as soon as he gets down there, he's like, moi gazelle, and she's like, nope. I don't know you, and drops plates, and she's like, who the hell fuck is this guy? So she starts running off, and he's giving chase.
Yeah, and so he picks her up, and like in the process just breaks her back.
Yeah.
And then as he picks her up, he's saying pretty, pretty, and then like when he breaks her back, he starts glitching out and just pretty, 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 pretty. And then we just cut to like later that night. Victor gets home with a TV as promised, and there's the dead maid on the couch. Yeah,
and Frank comes in. He's like, "She's been like that for a while. I guess she's sick."
Yeah, and yeah, Victor looks at like pulse and everything, and he's like, "I wanted to cuddle with her like you and Elizabeth do."
Right.
Then we cut to Victor and Frank carrying the dead maid into a graveyard. It's kind of like, I don't know if there's a name for those kind of graves where it's like a big stone over top.
Above ground. Very similar to the ones in Louisiana.
Yeah, and so Frank is able to just lift one of those big slabs and just, throw her in on top of an existing grave.
Yeah, they just dump her, and of course, hey, who's that guy watching? That looks an awful lot like the inspector from earlier.
Yeah, so this guy is definitely like
Black
up to
male.
something. Yes, yeah. Then we cut to Victor and Frank, and they are sleeping
in twin beds?
Yeah, in like twin beds in a room, and this is a different house, right?
Right. You know what, man? I don't know. Like, legitimately. At this point, I'm going to say maybe? It honestly doesn't feel like it. It's like Victor has like 15 different houses that he just fluctuates between. Like, because none of them feel cohesive or have a similar structure at all.
Yeah. This seems to be like a house out in the woods, but it could be like a cottage to the side or even just an extension off the side of the house. But regardless, they're sleeping in a room together. This is not the apartment that the creature has been sleeping in, and it's not the room that Victor and Elizabeth were in.
Right.
You know, while they're asleep, Frank wakes up and sneaks out the window and starts exploring the forest.
Yeah. I do like how he just walks by, smacks down like a fairly decent sized tree. It's not like big by any means, but he just folds it.
Yeah.
And then he gets chased up another one by a dog.
Yeah. So he's like, and it's like a smaller tree that he's in. And this dog's just like nipping at him from below. And then that cop shows up and is like, just shoos the dog away and it just leaves. And he's like, all right, you're safe. You can climb down now. Yeah. As soon as he gets down, he's like, all right, so here's the deal. Without me, you wouldn't even exist. Like, I had a big part in your creation.
You're not a real man anyway, you know?
Yeah. And I know about the murder. I know about where the body's buried. I even know that Victor is using a false identity. He's not Victor Lafori. He's Victor Frankenstein.
Oh, no. He is a Frankenstein.
Yeah.
But tell you what, as long as you guys keep coughing up money, you know, I won't have to tell anyone everything I know.
Yeah. And then Frank just slaps the hell out of him.
Pimp slaps the hell out of this man. Literally, Pimp slaps the life out of him.
Yeah, he just drops. Like, he is down.
Frank is not for being blackmailed.
And then he, like, looks down on him and he's like, oh, heck. What will Victor say?
Damn.
And then... Then we just immediately cut to Victor and Frank, and they are fishing together, like father and son. It's so sweet.
And Victor's like, finally, after all this time, I made my ancestors' dream come true.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then Frank's like, wait, I think I got one. I'm caught. It's a big one though, and like, you know, Victor's like helping him to reel it in, and it turns out it's that cop. Frank just chucked him in the lake, and now he's hooked him and dragged his dead body onto shore.
And just immediately Victor's like, not again.
Right.
He's like, I know what you did. You did this. I know this guy. You killed this man. And Frank's like, oops.
Like like they close up on his face, and it is just like, aw shucks. Oops.
Right. I just casually murdered. It's fine. Did it again. Damn.
Yeah. And so then we just immediately cut to them like hiding his body in the cemetery as well. From there, we cut to a scene of Frank by himself in the house, and learning this stuff about Victor, he's curious. So he's in the attic looking around, and he manages to find the notes from the original Victor Frankenstein.
Right, a bunch of anatomical drawings as well. The castle layout.
There's one book that is like printed, and I don't know if it's also Victor's notes. It looks like it's just literally a copy of Mary Shelley's Frankenstein. Like it has a sketch of Boris Karloff in it. Like, and he kind of looks at it and is like, that kind of looks like me.
Kind of, I guess. Sure, why not?
Yeah, and then he finds like rubber banded a bunch of like papers, passports and stuff, and they're in the Frankenstein name.
Right, a ye old passport from Victor Frankenstein, circa July 1859. He has actually a printed photo. What? Anyway, like this, I don't know. There's so many things wrong with it, but obviously it's a comedy. But it's obviously Victor's face on this Frankenstein.
Yeah, so Frank puts it in his back pocket and goes back downstairs. Mm-hmm. So Victor arrives then with Elizabeth and is like, "This is my cousin, Frank. He's from Zurich. Yeah. He's going to be staying with us for a while."
Yeah, he was in a car accident. That's why his face looks like that.
Yeah. And Elizabeth's like, I've never heard of this cousin Frank. That's weird, but okay. Mm-hmm. Like, you can tell she's getting some weird vibes, but she's like, all right, whatever you say, honey. And then, like...
You get the reverse etiquette.
Yeah. So now this has all been installed in Frank's head, so they're having dinner, and he's like, hey, you're not cutting your fish right. So he shows Victor how to do it.
Yeah, you got to use the fork to slide it over the bread.
Yeah, and then Elizabeth she's just trying to be nice and make, like, casual conversation, but she's asking him shit that he doesn't know because he's not actually Victor's cousin from Zurich. So he keeps having to kind of, like his aunt, it's like, oh yeah, I totally went to that place, and she's like, but where was it? Like, I can't remember the details, but it's like, did you live in this neighborhood? And he's like, yeah, and he's like...
So she first off, she asks him, like, if he speaks German. And Victor was like, no, he forgot that when he was in his accident. Okay, well, what does he do? He's in the cosmetic industry. Okay. So what was she actually speaks to him in German. Like, what small town did you come from? And he's like, I don't. Yes. That's, or yeah, is what Frank says.
It's one of those things where it's like, this has got to be raising some red flags for her that...
Yeah, for her, obviously on her face, she looks like, oh, okay, this is bizarre.
Yeah.
I don't trust any of this shit.
Yeah, and so then we cut to later that night.
Oh no, we also get to see that when they're folding the sheets for the bed, his hands are mismatched.
Oh yeah, okay.
And then all the red flags are set off. She's like, this motherfucker.
Yeah. Yeah, because they set him up on like the couch, like a pull-away bed kind of thing. Yeah, so then it's like nighttime. Victor and Elizabeth are sleeping together, and then Frank just shows up in the window and just lifts her up out of the window.
Yeah, content warning. It doesn't get any better from here.
Yeah. So yeah, he carries her out into the woods, and she's upset. Obviously, she's scared. She's screaming. She's crying, and he keeps trying to comfort her, and he's like, I'm not gonna hurt you, I just want to cuddle. Yeah, and this whole scene, I mean, it's really unpleasant, but I think the thing that's so bothersome is, like, Victor knew about this. Like, Victor knew with the maid, like, I want to cuddle, and Victor didn't say, that's not what you do, like, let me teach. He just left Frank not knowing right and wrong in this situation, and then not only, then he brought his wife to live with them.
Yes. It was almost kind of like a boys will be boys situation, which makes it worse.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But, okay, so I don't want to describe this too much because it's pretty rough, but he does strip her a little bit and do certain things. Does he hits completion, right? Like,
it seems like it is like, they kind of thankfully don't dwell on it too much as far as that, but, like, yeah, there is definitely some, like, him on top of her thrusting and then kind of stopping and like laying. Yeah, but like it doesn't look like he undresses, but that's kind of a common thing in movies, is just like somehow the pants have gotten undone and everything, because obviously we're not going to spend the time to show that kind of stuff when we can't show most of that anyway.
Well, the good news for Elizabeth is she doesn't take any of that bullshit, so she grabs the biggest rock she can find and brains the fucker.
Yeah.
So...
Yeah, and so she knocks him out and like then kind of like flips him over and gets out from under him, and then she sees that he's like covered in scars, and so she's like, okay, I definitely know what's going on now. So she goes back to the room. Victor's still asleep. She's getting dressed,
crying the whole time.
Yeah, and then he wakes up and sees her crying and is like, what's wrong? She's like, she's pissed. Like, obviously, she knows that Victor, she's mad because of what just happened to her and that Victor allowed it by arranging this situation.
Well, and by proxy, he also knocked her the fuck out with her own arm.
Right, yeah, true. And then Frank comes strolling in and he's like, it was just a cuddle. I didn't do anything wrong.
How gross did that feel?
Yeah, it's really, really unpleasant.
Yeah.
And she's like she's screaming and trying to back out of the room. She runs out to the car. So Victor chases after her, finally actually listens to her and responds to what's going on with her. Meanwhile, Frank glitches out again and is like, "You're causing me great sadness.
Yeah. I thought you said immense pain, but maybe it was that.
Oh, it might be it's something along those lines anyway. But so Victor goes out to Elizabeth. She gets in the car and is gonna leave, as she should. Victor gets in the car and tries to explain, and he's like, it's this curse of my ancestors. I had to do it. I know it sounds crazy.
We've always been trying to create these new life, but we've ended up creating monsters instead. So I had to give it a shot.
Yeah, and suddenly, she kind of starts to calm down, and she believes him, and she's like, "So how did you do it?"
Right.
And he's like, "Oh, I can show you. I'll explain everything." And so this is the point where it's bothersome.
She gets over this way too quickly.
Yeah, and this is the French thing. There's a lot of French movies that have stuff where women are assaulted and then not only get over it but fall in love with their assaulters.
Yeah.
And it's just not a good it's just not good. I don't know. I mean, this happens in not French movies, but it definitely happens more in French movies than anything else, and I don't know. I mean, I guess it's kind of it's a thing that France is very they're forward thinking and free and liberated with their sexuality, but that doesn't translate to being okay with this.
Yeah, no, that just sounds to me like you're coping with the assault.
Yeah,
it's you're making the best of a really bad situation.
Yeah. And so that'll continue. So if that concept is bothersome, you probably want to get out now because it only gets worse.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, the fact that they downplay it so hard.
Yeah. This will be there won't be any more assaults, but the response to it will continue to devolve in ways that are bothersome.
Yeah. There is also a scene that's also just kind of gross because it happens to people who they basically play it off. I mean, don't get me wrong. This was made in the 80s. I'm not going to say that it was a different time because it's inexcusable. It's just inexcusable.
Mm-hmm.
But people laughed at that kind of stuff at that time.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah.
So, yes, she comes back in and says, "Well, it looks like I am indeed the bride of Frankenstein." Ha, cha, 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 pop, pop. Anyway.
Yeah. But while they're talking, Frank walks off into the forest. So when they come inside, they're like, "Wait, where is he? Where did he go?" And so Victor rushes back outside and finds Frank walking into the lake. And he's like, "I should never have been made. I want to die. I'm terrible. I'm a monster."
Not gonna lie, it would have been fine if he'd done it.
Right.
It sounds it sounds bad, but that's his redemption.
I mean, he has exhibited monstrous behavior. He does not deserve. This is not a sympathetic monster at this point, and they'll keep trying to make him so as it goes. But it's really hard to forgive this stuff.
Right. But Victor does say, "Hey, you're my child. You have to come back," and he acts very, very fatherly towards Frank.
This is what should have happened after the maid. He's I can teach you. We can be better. Elizabeth's here. We're gonna work with you. It's gonna be okay.
And for his part, Frank does apologize to Elizabeth. So there's that, I guess.
Yeah. Because we cut away to them all riding in a car, Victor and Elizabeth together with Frank in the back like their kid.
Yeah.
And that's where he apologized, and he puts his hand on her shoulder, which is
that's
if you're
worse.
Just don't touch her. If you're gonna apologize, you don't need to be in her personal space anymore. And not only his apology is "I'm sorry, I was in need of some tenderness." And it's no, that's not a good apology.
That's the worst, actually.
Yeah.
Yeah. I was needing some affection. Ugh. Right. Okay. And then we cut to Victor and Frank watching a very low budget version of the 1931 Frankenstein, which did not star Boris Karloff, but they say it did.
I think they say Maurice Tarloff, don't they?
Oh, maybe they do. I thought, yeah, maybe.
So it's like a French bootleg, version of, but like
it is
the footage
French
of this
bootleg.
is, the footage is pretty funny. Like like I kind of wish that like a deluxe version of this movie came out with like, here's all of the footage we shot for that, because it does look pretty entertaining.
And this is where it starts to get funny again, if you can push off that other stuff, in that, like, Frank has the very, like, I know this story, but this is bullshit thing. Like, if you do a certain profession and there's a movie about that profession, you're like, ah! Like, he has that kind of thing going on.
Yeah, it's because like my parents were both like in like the medical field, and like when I was a kid, I remember they would always like anytime they'd watch like ER or Chicago Hope, they'd be like, "What? That's not how you do that!" And then they'd get so mad. And yeah, it's definitely that vibe.
Yeah, I remember being like working in IT and then like watching movies from the early '90s where they're hacking into cars. It's like those don't have that capability yet. That's not a thing.
Right.
Okay. All right. Yeah.
And even Victor's like, I told you were gonna hate this movie. I don't know why you wanted to come.
Right.
He's like,
just wrote a bunch of like garbage about our family.
Yeah, he's like, yeah. He says Mary Shelley wrote a stupid book, but this movie tops it.
Right.
And so yeah, they get home and Elizabeth has baked them a cake. And they're talking to her about the movie they've seen. And I think this is where they say it's that the actor's name is Maurice Tarloff.
Right.
And they give Frank some champagne. He's having his first taste of alcohol, and they do a toast.
Man, I got real nervous. I'm like, if he gets drunk and does something.
Yeah. Thankfully, they're leaning more towards the funny for this part. So
right. Well, also Victor's like, you get 2.
Yeah.
You get 2. We're done. And already Frank is smashed.
Yeah. And he starts talking and he's like, yeah, I hated that movie, but at the same time, like, I get it. Like, I understood the plight of that lonely monster who just wanted love, you know?
Yeah. You see in his eyes, he just wanted to be loved.
Yeah. And then he starts kind of drunkenly complimenting Elizabeth. And that's when I was like, oh no, like, don't pay any more attention to Elizabeth in that way.
Well, at least he falls asleep snuggling Victor.
Yeah, he's passed out, so Victor and Elizabeth kind of tuck him in, and then we get another nightmare sequence.
Yeah. He's chasing a lady who's laughing and giggling, which, that's still awful, but...
Yeah, and it's like she's, we're seeing like his perspective, so we see the lady from behind, she's wearing like a white dress and running, but then she turns to look at him and has this like hideous, monstrous face. Yeah. So he wakes up screaming. Victor is like, he isn't well, and Elizabeth's like, I told you, we have no choice. Victor's like,
I do it now, right?
Yeah, he's like, I don't know if we can take the risk again, and she's like, I'll be with you, we can do it this time.
Right. So what are they doing? Burlesque show! Hey!
Yeah.
We're 2 for 2.
Yeah. So, yep, they're just watching, it's like 5, I think, exotic dancers, and they're, dancing like in like G-strings, topless or whatever. And for a second I was like, what's going on? And then I was like, oh, okay. Yeah. They're shopping for body parts.
Yeah. Like,
so,
literally. And like, but Liz is like, well, we can go to the morgue and we can get all this stuff. And like, Victor, I'm also, Frank's in just a suit, Yeah. He's like in a really fancy suit. It's like, that's funny in and of itself. But Victor's like, oh yeah, you need the butt of this girl, the boobs of this girl, the legs of this girl.
Yeah, and Elizabeth's like, yeah, I think we, I think we can do that. Like, I've got good connections at the morgue, so if we figure out the body type that we need, I can find something similar at the morgue.
Right.
And Frank's like, I don't really have a preference. I don't really I don't know my type yet. And Victor's like, I got this. I know. Right. And he's like, all right, like you said, he picks out the specific women and which parts he likes from them.
Now, to make you a little bit more nervous, though, Frank's like, well, I like someone who's, more sensitive, and she turns her head a certain way that just happens to be the way Elizabeth turns her head, and is brunette like Elizabeth, and is like Elizabeth.
Yeah. Yep. So we pretty much just cut to the next morning. Victor and Elizabeth are in bed together, and Frank comes bursting in, and he's like, I've got a surprise.
Yeah. He pulled a ice truck into their living room. Or their garage really close to the living room?
I guess. And so it's just a meat truck. They open the back, and it's, refrigerated.
It's the girls from last night. All of them, and they're all dead because he killed them.
Yep, they're just hanging on meat hooks in the back of this van.
And Victor's like, you did it again.
Yeah, and he's like, that's it. I'm going to the police. Like, you're not learning. Like, I'm trying to teach you to not do this, and you're not learning.
And he goes to the cops. How did he get to the cops, though? Because, literally, it just cuts to him in their car.
Driving back to his house.
Why wouldn't you just be like, we're waiting here for the cops? You're going with them.
So he's like, there's a monster. I made him. He's killing people. We've got a bunch of dead bodies in the tombs at the cemetery. Then we see, as they're driving, a car goes by.
Away.
Yeah.
That's weird.
Yeah, so I was thinking they go to the house, but no, they go to the cemetery because then they open up these tombs and there's just, very decayed old skeletons in there, but nothing new.
Nothing newer than 100 years ago, right?
Yeah.
Oh, that's weird.
So they were like, we've seen Frankenstein movies, like, you're crazy, He's like, I swear, they got here first, they took the bodies, and they're like, dude, just go home. Like, we're not dealing with your nonsense anymore.
Right. And then we immediately cut to Victor laying in this weird 80s, early 90s lounge chair. And Elizabeth's calming him because it's like, yeah, me and Frank, we took the bodies and moved them so nobody got in trouble. But
yeah, and she's like, he'll learn from his mistakes. It's just going to take time. You got to realize he's a super strong newborn child. These are just little mistakes.
Yeah, and don't worry, Adelaide will fix him. She just casually drops that name in.
Yeah.
Who's Adelaide? Well, you're going to find out who Adelaide is.
Yep, so we pretty much cut away to them working on the bride, Adelaide. So we've got Victor, he's got another computer that's labeled Adelaide. He's doing the programming while Elizabeth
has the inability to say no to the man she loves.
Oh man, that one bummed me out. That was
right?
Yeah. He's putting all the instructions of what she's going to be like, and so they're making the perfect woman, and so apparently I think it's specifically
the perfect woman as from a man in the 1980s.
Yeah, I always say yes to the man who loves me. Ugh.
Yep.
So Victor's doing that while Elizabeth is actually putting the body together.
Yeah, so now she'll have blood on her hands too.
Right.
Literally and figuratively.
And, but again, this is where, Elizabeth it's just not, she
should be the fuck out of here.
Yeah, and she's not only, she's helping this creature who has hurt her, and, not only that, but, these women were just murdered, and she says, out of 3 imperfect women, I've made perfection. And it's fuck off with that. Those women weren't, you didn't improve on this. You ended 3 lives. This is not...
Right.
So, this is where she stops being sympathetic for me.
Absolutely. The fact that she just throws herself into it with abandon.
Yeah. Then we get, them bringing Adelaide to life.
Mm-hmm. Technically, does this pass the Bechdel test? Because she's not talking to Victor or Frank at this point. She's literally talking to the bodies.
Yeah, I guess so.
Oh, that's an interesting... We need more thoughts on this. We need more than our own. People weigh in. Let us know.
But yeah, so ultimately, Adelaide wakes and Frank comes in, and but it's so good. So Adelaide gets up, she goes straight to Victor and is like, "My love, I'm so happy." And
they're like, "Victor's not your love." And
yeah, it's this one. It's the other guy, and she's like, "Ah, my love, I'm so." So she's just programmed to be a sex bot, basically. It feels like.
Well, luckily she does establish her own agency, but...
Yeah, thankfully.
Yeah.
Then she kind of collapses at that point. Frank carries her upstairs, and they're like, okay, she's alive, but she needs to rest. She's got a lot of healing to do from all these surgeries. Later on, it's we get a little brief scene where Frank kind of comes in, and this one, it could be seen as sweet. I don't know. Like, he goes in while she's asleep and just kind of like caresses her hip. You know, it's not too aggressive. Like, this is something that you would do with a partner, but like they're not really partners yet. So
yeah, and technically she's only been alive for a couple minutes, maybe a couple hours.
Yeah, yeah. So it's not the best, but compared to the other stuff, not the worst either.
Yeah, ain't that it?
Then we cut to like the next day, and Adelaide's still asleep. The other three are eating dinner, and Frank's like, she's been asleep for like 24 hours. Like, I'm starting to get scared.
Right, and immediately she shows up, completely naked, just with the little tape around her nose because her face was just made. And she's just like, hey, everybody, and just sits down eating with boobs flopping everywhere.
Yeah, and she's like, I'm starving, and Frank's like, hey, you're stark naked, and she's like, what, you don't find me beautiful? And it's like, yeah, okay. Like,
the argument accepted.
Yeah, like, you know, good. I guess, you know, you're confident, feel good about your body. That's great.
Yep.
No complaints. That's okay.
All right. Well, we also have cops talking to the other burlesque dancers at the place where all the girls have gone missing, and the lady is like, oh yeah, the guy looked just like Frankenstein.
Yeah. And the cops are like, huh, Frankenstein, that's interesting. We've heard that just recently. Mm-hmm. So, yeah, they're starting to figure some stuff out.
Yeah, then we cut to a group of two butchers. Apparently, there was a big guy who looked a lot like a Frankenstein monster who just strolled in and stole a car and punched one of the guys in the face. But if we ever see him again, we'll give him what for, and punches the side of beef.
Yeah. So, so the cops are like, okay, something, you know, we kind of know what's up now. Mm-hmm. So back at the house, Victor's removing Adelaide's bandages and sees her face, and he's like, oh, Frank's a lucky man.
Mm-hmm. Yep. It's almost like they're pairing off, but wrong. Anyway.
Yeah, and then that's what, so like that night, we see Adelaide and Frank in bed together, and she's like eagerly kissing Frank, and he's just kind of laying there. Like, he does not seem into it at all.
Yeah. She's like, what's wrong? And am I not attractive? And he's like, well, you are. It's just, I'm thinking about things.
Yeah. And then, like, he hears a noise, and it's a noise outside, and it's like, you hear noises outside all the time, but I think it's just like, oh, this is an opportunity to, like, get away from her for a second.
It seemed that way, yeah.
So he goes and looks, and thankfully he does, because there's like a whole SWAT team outside getting ready to break into the house.
Right. And what's his first thought? Is it just escape through the window, escape any which way? Nah, it's, I'm stealing fucking Dad's car and we're going on a trip.
Yeah. Yeah, so he like gets dressed, gets in the car.
In the suit, by the way. He puts on the suit.
Yeah. And so he speeds out of the garage and immediately just smashes into the SWAT van.
Yep. Gets swarmed by cops. Easily fights them all off.
Yeah, like there's like a dozen cops. He yanks like a parking meter out of the ground and is just like beating them with it.
Now, to be fair, he doesn't kill any of them that we noticed.
Yeah.
Probably came pretty close on a couple.
There's like a fountain. He like rips a big chunk off of it and just throws it at them. There's like water spraying everywhere.
Yeah, he throws it at the car, and because this is the 80s and cars were made out of combustium at the time, it just bursts into flames.
Yeah. Yeah, and so then he like climbs up the side of a building and disappears, and then
he jumps, and it's like, oh, did he kill himself?
Yeah,
but then
we'll see a dump truck driving away in a minute, and he's like just laying in the dirt.
Yeah.
But at this point, Victor comes out and is like, "This is all my fault," and the cops are like, "Yeah, it is." So then we'll see Frank like out on a street, looking in a store. This is like a thing that's in movies a lot, like
the third act downturn.
The looking through the store window to watch TV, and like I've never seen a TV in a store window in my entire life.
Like, I did, but it was never attached to anything. It was definitely not powered.
Yeah, like you could go into like. Even now, you can go to Best Buy and there will be TVs that are on playing stuff, but they're not like usually in the window of like a department store.
Yeah, they're not playing news. They're always definitely playing just movies.
But yeah, but Frank sees that like Elizabeth and Victor are being like escorted by the police into like the courthouse or the police station or something. So he knows, they've been arrested or arraigned or something.
Hey, you know what he needs, though? He needs to make a call. And there's this old lady who maybe could let him borrow some money. So he just was like, hey, give me your purse.
And the old lady is like fucking terrified, and she should be. Yeah. And it's such a, like, this is a funny, terrifying moment, because like he takes the purse from her and she's just like standing there shaking, and he like opens it, pulls out the wallet, and he takes like one coin out, like, for a payphone, and puts everything back together and is like, all right, thanks, here you go, and like walks off.
Right. See, that's what this movie should have been.
Yeah. Then we just cut to back at the house. Victor, Elizabeth, and Adelaide are now watching the news. So whatever happened, they've been released. They weren't, they're out on bail or whatever. So the news is like, breaking news: Mary Shelley's story was not a fable. The Frankenstein monster exists and is on the run. And so they're watching that like, oh no, what are we gonna do? Right.
Well, at that time they get a call. And Frank basically just says, I'm not going to be a bother anymore. I'm just going to disappear.
Yeah, and he's specifically talking to Elizabeth. Yeah. And, he's like, I care about you. I want to make sure that you're okay. Mm-hmm. So, he's not talking to Adelaide. He's talking to Elizabeth.
Turns out the cops were listening in, though.
Yeah, they've got the phone tapped. So they're like, that's interesting. Later on that night, Victor is talking to... Turns out that Frank exists as a computer still as well.
Well, this is Frank the Second.
Yeah. And so but it's like, it's one of those things, like in a movie, if you've got clones, they remember everything from before the cloning, but like afterwards they have their own unique memories. Yeah. So he has everything before the implantation. He still has all that, but he doesn't, have the memories of the body. Right. But,
like, so tell me more about what myself was like, so I can more accurately represent that.
Yeah, it's almost like an algorithm thing where it's like, if you input enough data, I can predict what I would do in that situation.
Right.
And
it turns
basically,
out he would either end his life or he would go to the place he was born.
Yeah, he's like, I'd try to find my origins. And Victor's like, okay, I know where to go. Mm-hmm. So they're getting ready to leave, but then were these cops or reporters outside the house?
Okay, so I think they were undercover cops. They didn't foreshadow any of this. Like, straight up, Adelaide gets out and runs in her, what's the lady from Weird Science?
Oh, Kelly LeBrock.
Yeah, Kelly LeBrock, her Kelly LeBrock cosplay, and starts jogging down the street. And, like, these two cops / reporters are like, hey, lady, hey, pretty lady,
Yeah, and she's like slow motion jogging without a bra, and then while they're following her, Victor and Elizabeth jump in the car and
what happens is that they approach her and she just takes the living shit out of them. Yeah. She goes like full ninja warrior on these guys. Mm-hmm. And
they speed away.
Yeah. And
they used her as a distraction. So that's pretty nice.
Yeah. Adelaide's the winner of this show. I'm just saying.
Oh, 100%. Mm-hmm. Then we cut to Frank. He has arrived at the Castle Frankenstein.
I like how he just shows up on a bike, just like a dingy little bike.
Yeah, and there's like a tomb, and he just immediately like goes over there and is like, oh, this is the secret passage, and it just opens, and he goes down into like a secret lab. Just instantly knows where that would be.
Right, and he runs into a just pile of bones that were just stacked there in the crypt, presumably. Which, that seems a little rude to do to your ancestors. Just saying. I'm not passing too much judgment, but you do you. And he also finds something that just says, like, Frank, 1816 to 1817.
Yeah, so this would be, like, the first monster, presumably.
Right. And he opens it up, and it looks like a Boris Karloff ripoff. Or, I'm sorry, Maurice Tarloff.
Right. And so then he goes back outside and just steals a pig from a nearby farm.
Well, like, he kills that pig. Mm-hmm. Like, you hear the cracking and, like, stuff with the bones, but he's just, like, gently petting it to begin with. And this little shepherd child, I don't know if it's a boy or a girl.
Yeah, you couldn't quite tell. Yeah, and this is another one where it was like, it felt like this was going to be a character that would matter, and you never see them again.
Yeah. But, yeah. And they just smile as they watch him pick up a pig and kill it.
Yeah.
So this kid's presumably a serial killer in the future?
Yeah.
So.
And so then, he takes it back to the house and just roasts the whole pig in this big-ass fireplace.
Yeah.
And then we see, like, a villager ride by and see, like, this silhouette of the monster through the window.
Doing something, yeah.
Yeah, and so
he's like, oh, shit, not again.
Yeah, so he runs away. Meanwhile, Victor, Elizabeth, and Adelaide arrive at the castle, and Frank goes and hides. Because he, like, hears people coming in.
Right, and Victor's like, all right, family, fan out. We got to find Frank.
Adelaide ends up finding a secret door inside the house, which leads to the original Victor Frankenstein's lab. And some of this stuff is really cool. They did a really good job of, like, recreating a lot of that gothic imagery from, like, the Universal films.
Right, and I'm not sure if they're Flappy Birds or they're Flappy Bats. But there's some flappy things going on down here.
Oh, definitely. I wrote that as well. And we just get, like, a lot of it's we get the slab with, like, the metal bands to, like, strap down and all that.
It's almost like a nostalgic, you're revisiting something that you haven't seen for a long time.
Yeah. And then she sees that Frank is in there, and she's so happy to see him, and he's just kind of like, oh, hey, like, not thrilled to see her.
Right, and of course Adelaide's then like, all right, so do you love someone else, or you like Elizabeth, right?
Yeah.
And then, he's like, no, and she drops the F-bomb on him, and I'm not talking about the word fuck.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And in fact, like, because he says, like, just leave me alone, I just want peace, and then she says that word, and then they both glitch out, and he just keeps yelling peace, and she just keeps yelling that word.
Yep.
Yep. Victor and Elizabeth hear this, and they go running, and they end up finding Adelaide and Frank fighting on the roof of the castle.
Right, they're like slapping each other pretty hard. He knocks her into the parapet and almost knocks it off, and she just keeps like waylaying him a couple times.
Yeah, and then she finally kicks him in the balls, and
in the balls.
Is effective.
Super effective.
And so that kind of like ends the fight, and then Elizabeth takes Frank to go downstairs to comfort him and deal with his injuries, while Victor stays up on the rooftop to comfort Adelaide.
Yeah. So if you didn't know, you know now what's going to happen.
Yeah. And it starts in, like, Victor's like, my baby, and it feels like, my creation. Like, it's a father-daughter moment.
Yeah, not like that, though.
No. Yeah, and so while that's going on, Frank and Elizabeth are rowing out into the lake in a little rowboat.
Right, having a romantic day on the pond, I guess.
Yeah. And then, up on the roof, Adelaide is just, like, completely seducing Victor.
Right, she's like, hey, let's have sex now. And he's like, whoa, I don't know. And then she's like, nope, it's going to happen, buddy.
Yeah, and he's like, I don't, this feels so sudden. And she's like, but you want it, right? And he's like, well, yeah. But it feels sudden.
That's why it's not gross, because he's like, yes, I this is consent.
Yeah, so they pair off, and, that's fine, I guess.
Yeah, I guess.
Then we get Frank talking to Elizabeth, and he's like, I think you and I could be so happy together. She seems into that idea. Like, she's kind of, like, she doesn't shut him down, which it's like, she should, because we know what happened in the past. We don't, not to keep revisiting that, but, like,
Yeah, But, and he's like, I know you don't like me because of my face. And she's like, well, we can fix your face. It's your personality and your horribleness that, we really care about.
Yeah. And, so at this point, we start to hear sirens in the distance. And then suddenly we see that their little rowboat on this little lake is completely surrounded by police boats.
Right. Well, let's see. He's a Frankenstein, so he's not going to slow down one bit. He picks up that oar and he just like speeds across the lake with just a few paddles.
So now Elizabeth and Frank are running, and they're being chased by police with police dogs.
Right. I like how they just immediately cross over into the snowy mountains.
Yeah.
It's like, this is, deciduous, like regular forest, probably maybe fall at the latest.
Yeah.
And then boom, snow everywhere.
Yeah, we just got to have those glacier scenes, so it's a Frankenstein movie.
Yeah.
Yeah, so they're running through the snow, but like now the snow's so deep, Elizabeth's having trouble keeping up, And Frank's just like, you stay, it's fine, they're not going to hurt you, they're after me. So he runs away. Sure enough, they continue after Frank. They're not really concerned about Elizabeth so much.
Right. Now Frank would kick the shit out of another person. However, he is terrified of dogs, and they are surrounding him with dogs. And
then just like, luckily or unluckily, the ice breaks and he just falls through into an ice cave. So he's escaped from the dogs.
Right. Well, unfortunately, he's unconscious and he slowly gets encased in ice. So this is the best ending for Frank, right? This is the I mean,
yeah.
He did monstrous things. He got his comeuppance, right?
Yeah, and this is our, sort of, we've had him encased in ice in some of the Universal movies as well, and it's sort of a variation of the ending of the book, so, like, that feels appropriate.
Yeah.
But nope, that's not the end.
Oh, no. Well, Adelaide is actually comes and comforts Elizabeth, and she's like, listen, you need to get some sleep. You look really tired, This staying up like this won't help anything. So as soon as she leaves, Elizabeth gets closer to the little bit of Frank's face that's sticking out. And his eyes open. Oh, no, he's still alive. Ah.
Right. Yeah, so then we just get a little words across the screen that say, a few months later, and now we've got Frank, and so it's the same actor.
Like Frank, but he's definitely, like, had some work done.
Yeah, so this actor that plays Frank throughout the movie, like, they haven't, like, buried him under makeup, like, it's not like Karloff level makeup, but, like, they've given him a little bit of, like, a pronounced brow and, obviously some scars and stuff.
Fake teeth.
Yeah, and so they get rid of that, and so now it's just the actor the way he normally looks, so it looks like they've just, given him a cosmetic upgrade.
Yep. But also, he's in full 80s businessman attire and speaking Japanese to as a throwback to the joke earlier in the movie that Elizabeth said about Victor.
Yeah. So he's got like a whole group of like Japanese investors. He's discussing business with them. And then he gets into like the car, and it's like he's being driven, and he's got like a cell phone, a big ass 80s cell phone.
He gets a call, perfect English. He's like, "No, I don't want to make a deal. I just want you to accept this," in English. And then he gets another call, and he's speaking German, but he kind of glitches out in the German.
Then so they arrive at the castle, and he gets out, and Elizabeth's there, and she's like, "Hey, handsome," or like they're looking in the mirror together, like she's like looking over his shoulder and says that he's handsome, and they kiss. So this is a good sort of reversal of like the creature seeing himself in the mirror and being disgusted. Like now he's a regular man again.
Yeah. Then we get some klaxons, and we go in, and there's a head melting. There's just a head melting there.
Yeah.
What?
It's like Indiana Jones face melt, but instead of a skull, it's like a robot kind of skull underneath.
It's like David Bowie's head.
Yeah. And Victor's like mad about it. He's frustrated. He's down there working. He's like, the Frankenstein name is on the line. This is going to make me look bad. We're being rushed. These Tokyo investors, they need to be patient. And Adelaide's there. She's kind of like the lab assistant helping Victor.
And at this moment, I was like, wait, did we do a reversal? Is Victor now like working under Frank? But no, they're partners. They're business partners.
Yeah, and it's like Frank's doing the businessman side. He's the face of the business, and Victor's the brains. He's doing the work. Right. So they've paired off in the reverse pairs, as we've said.
Hey, guess what? They're getting married, both of them. Yay! Yeah. I guess.
Right. Yeah. So yeah, and then it's like later on that night, Elizabeth comes in. She's got wine for a toast. So she's pregnant, right? Like that's what the toast is about.
Yeah.
So, yeah, like she doesn't spell it out, but it's like it's happened. We're all celebrating, and they're like, "Oh, congratulations!"
Well,
and,
I think doesn't Adelaide say you too? So I guess, I think they're both pregnant.
Oh, okay, yeah, and like Frank is like he glitches out one more time, and he's like, "It's wonderful, wonderful, wonderful," right. And then we cut downstairs, and I appreciate this little ending here.
These characters are my favorite now. Because they're like two David Bowie, like Ziggy Stardust androids, and they both basically just walk out of this little cabinet, and they walk up the stairs, and like the guy's like, "Hey, I know you want to get pregnant, but we're gonna find a way in the future,"
Yeah, like he sees or they see the couples dancing, and they even say like, "These jerks never get tired of flirting."
Oh, they call them assholes. I thought. Like, these assholes.
And like you said, he's like, I know you want to get pregnant, but I think I've cracked the system, and the future is ours.
Right. Dun, dun, dun. I hope they win. I'm really pulling for these guys.
Yeah.
Because, man, nobody else deserves it.
Yeah.
And then the couples dance to the credits at the end.
Yeah. So it's kind of like, it is a nice little thing because, we have like Frankenstein creates a monster, quote unquote, fixes the monster, and then they team up to make a new monster, these robots. And so, of course, that's obviously going to come back to bite them. Yeah, so it's a strange movie. It's a hard one to recommend.
Yeah, I mean, there are parts that are great. There are parts that weigh down the parts that are great.
Yeah,
and like buries them. Not to put too much of a joke on it, but
yeah, but it's like the funny moments are funny, and it's like if that one scene with Frank and Elizabeth in the woods wasn't there, Frank would be more likable. The relationship with Frank and Elizabeth would be fine.
It would not be as gross.
Yeah, everything it's just like if
really
Victor had
everything.
Yeah. Victor had told him, like, after the maid, like, that's not what you do. Like, that's not how this works.
Well, even honestly, if they had just, like, found, like, as dark as it sounds, if they had done, like, a comedy montage where just random ladies were dying, that would have been better than Frank literally going out to kill the burlesque dancers.
Yeah.
Like, on top of what he did with Elizabeth.
Yeah, it's just, I mean, like I said, it's the French thing. I think to their mind, like, that's fine because she, it's that she said no, but she really wanted it to happen in the long run, and that's just the worst.
No, but her body said yes. That's not cool, man.
Yeah, like, that's worse than having just the assault. Like, having that confirmation that she wanted it is not good. Like, that message is not something that you really want out into the world.
Yep, agreed with that. So maybe skip this, or maybe have your finger ready on the fast forward button whenever you notice the woods pop up, or scoop her up out of the window. Yeah,
it's you definitely have to watch this knowing what you're getting into, and it's not a really graphic scene, but because of the way it plays out afterwards, it is one of the most unpleasant ones that we've watched for this, for sure.
I mean, it still beats Italian Herbert West or Spanish Herbert West Reanimator.
Oh yeah, that one is real bad, but it's
probably skip it.
Yeah.
Any other thoughts?
I think that's it.
Yeah, fair enough. Well, in that case, where can they find us, my man?
Yep. So you can find us on all the socials, whatever ones are around. We're kind of trying them all. We'll see what sticks. But yeah, we're on Twitter, Instagram, Hive, Tumblr, Mastodon. Reddit. We started a Reddit. They're all the Frankencast. I think the Reddit is the _ Frankencast. Mm-hmm. All the rest are just the Frankencast. And Mastodon has .vmst at the end because they're getting more complicated with how social media names are.
Right. You can't just be simple anymore.
Yeah. You can also just email us. That's not going away. thefrankencast@gmail.com. And of course, you can easily find us at patreon.com/thefrankencast.
Yeah. Check us out there if you want to. There's a lot of good content. At least a lot of funny content.
Yeah, there's a lot. We're able to do different things there. It's a little more experimental. We have episodes that are really fun, episodes that are deep dives into, like we went through all of Mary Shelley's novel bit by bit and really kind of dug into that. We've done a lot of different stuff, watched a lot of the Munsters.
Yeah, I dare say there's a couple that are kind of sexy.
Yeah. There's all kinds of fun stuff over there. Whatever you're looking for, we got it. So check us out there.
Hell yeah. All right, well, in that case, Anthony, I'm gonna try and get us through this Frankenwarp, okay? I think now we're going to go into the distant future, the year 2000. Yep, that's what we're watching next week.
Yep, Frankenstein 2000, so that's the last of our sort of decades of Frankenstein quadrilogy. That are all completely unrelated.
Yeah, I think we'll get out the Frankenwarp then, right?
Yeah. So yep, join us next week for that.
Yep, and what a way to start a new year.
Right.
And to be continued.
Looks like you survived another episode. The Frankencast is a production of FCR Media. It's hosted by Anthony Bowman and Eric Velasquez. Follow us on Twitter at The Frankencast, or send us a letter at thefrankencast@gmail.com. Our cover art is by Amanda Keller. You can find her at Keller Illustrations on Instagram. Our theme music is by Vivek Abhishek. Thanks for listening.